And welcome to the Neal Show. I'm Neal Kruse, your host. We are going to have with us today as a guest a really big surprise. Her name is Jennifer Forrest. I'm joking, of course, because you heard her last week and you heard her 2 weeks before that. And the way this happens is this is a pre-recorded show because you are now in the middle of the fabulous AT&T weekend. And Mark Carbonaro, my producer, and all of the great people on his team are out there busy telegraphing to the world the results of the AT&T golf tournament, which is why you always want to stay tuned into the station to get the inside stories here. So I wasn't actually intending to have Jennifer as a guest for this pre-recorded show. I had in mind another show, and I was going to talk about architecture, and I was going to talk about the absolute basis for beautiful architecture, that the appreciation of architecture is not entirely subjective, that there is an absolute foundation to what determines architecture as beautiful or not. But it turns out that Jennifer and I started talking, after we did the show last week, and I was saying, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do for this second show and so on. I'm telling all this to Jennifer, and then I said, well, do you have time? Because we could just do another show. And she says, sure, I have time. So Jennifer Forrest is with us right now. And I want you to all remember you can go to nealandlarry.com, Neal and Larry.com, and listen to this show where it will be mounted under past shows. And I always do that because a lot of people cannot listen to the show during the Saturday. They're busy or what have you. I used to have about half of my audience here in the local area would listen to the show on Saturday nights just because that was the nighttime was the best time to listen to the show. So that's why we do these recordings in the show and we mount them on my website. And don't forget Neal and Larry Weingarten's website, Larry Weingarten, whom all of you know, and he's a very busy boy these days, I have to tell you. We're talking more and more. He's getting on me about this housing thing, saying, when are we going to do that? So I got it, Larry. We're moving in that direction here real soon. You can get the newsletter by going to nealandlarry.com, and you can also put your name on the front web page, and then the newsletter will come to you automatically through the email. So remember, this is a pre-recorded show, and it was actually done a week earlier. And again, I am so enamored of Jennifer Forrest, and by the way, that's 2 N's in Jennifer, who is from Wales, England. And she did a show for a woman that I respect very highly and does really good YouTube interviews, Sarah Westall, not Westfall, Westall. And I recommend her show to many of you out there. Just wonderful. Plus, she's just an incredible woman. And that was the first time that I heard Jennifer Forrest. And I was kind of listening in the background while I was drawing and doing architecture, and I kept getting this feeling like, why does this seem so significant to me? It's like something inside of me was saying, you really need to pay attention to this. This is not just another show. And anyway, so today is our third show with Jennifer Forrest, and that should tell you how much I think of her work. But it also just has worked out so well for us to do the 2 shows together. Now, remembering where we left off in the last show, we were talking about feels, and I had asked Jennifer to explain to us what a feel is and how that is the part of us that grows when we are in our own correct environment, when we are in a place that honors and respects who we are. But what Jennifer says is we have to find out who we are. And so the point I was trying to make in the last show is we all think we know who we are, but we don't necessarily. And so one of the first things she does is to say, this is how you find out who you are. And then she got into all of those things that you look at. It might be your hobbies, it's your personality, it's your IQ level, it's the way your brain works. And Jennifer, on that note, I just wanted to amplify that a little bit. I have friends that are in brain science and speech therapy, and they know all about the brain and how the brain works. And one of my friends that I'm very close to constantly educates me to this. And I said to her, you know what? We should all, right away in school, whenever we start to get into that world of education and so on, there should be tests that tell us how our brain works. Some of us are verbal. Some of us are visual. If we knew these things about ourselves, we would know which classes to go to. Or we'd know which teachers to listen to, because somebody would have told us, you know, speaking is just not really your thing. I know you struggle with words and so on. So you don't want to become a professional speaker because you're going to get a lot of what Jennifer calls negative feels. But you're really good at drawing. So why don't you go into something where you're sketching and drawing and you're going to feel good, and people are going to look at that and say, wow, that's really good. You really have a gift. And now you're feeling good about yourself. Your feels are coming up inside of you. And from that, the growth of that inner energy, these inner feels, comes what so often defines your happiness, your healthiness, and so on. So we talked a little while ago about what today's show should be about, and now I'm going to have Jennifer start talking about that. Jennifer, what did we talk about that we would talk about today?
Well, what we were talking about was how a part of who you are is your imagination, and that really is the last part of you. It's the essence part of you. And when you do this work, once you have got the hang of the learning style, the inherent talent you have, and your IQ level, what happens, your imagination then takes over and then uses all that information to start to create something from you, which is what we're here for. And as we were chatting, what I love to do with people, because once they have the hang of this, it's really exciting to actually look at the individual, you know. And I sort of said to you, you know, I'd love to reference all this work to you building your amazing houses, your architecture, because all the people that you're building houses with, you are creating plus feel experiences for them, because you're going from who they are and understanding that and then creating it, rather than, as we said, just thinking about what is a nice house.
Yes.
That's mine, and that's not based on who that person is.
Yes.
So you're naturally doing this anyway. And to be honest with you, a lot of people are doing this anyway, but they don't know they are. So they kind of get in a bit of a confusion sometimes between mind and feel, thinking and knowing. So I thought it would be a great idea if you could sort of share some of the marvellous work you've done, given who the person was, and then what happened when you started to use your imagination, given who they are, and using your talent to then create something that didn't exist before. It was only an idea, to actually create something in this three-dimensional planet that then works and gives these people plus feel experiences.
Yes. Okay, so all of these things that make up who I am, you're saying that the imagination, if I learn about who I am, Jennifer, let's say, for example, I go to MPC and I take a test. And they have these tests, everybody. I want you to know this. You can go to MPC, probably CSUMB, and ask for a test that will help you understand how your mind works, what type of mind, what type of thinking you have. For example, one of my friends said, Neal, you would probably be what we call a slow processor. You have a slow processor mind. And I said, well, what the heck is that? And she said, it means that you're really good with really complicated things, but you're not really fast with your mind. So when you go to a client and they say, give me a whole bunch of ideas for a really hot-looking house, you're going to go, I suppose we could do a triangle and then we could have steeple and we could do this. Yeah, it's not your thing. So they said, you have a slow processor mind. What you want to do is gradually work into this, and you can deal with a lot of complexity. So ask them about the children, ask them about the wife, the husband, ask them about their past, their history, because you love all that information, and you're building this awareness of the client in your mind. And a slow processor mind works really good with that. Other people don't have slow processor minds. They're really good with the fast ideas. And if you throw complexity at them, they're stuck in the mud. So I was told that, Jennifer, by these people around me who study the mind. And it really helped me, because I was beating myself up all the time, you know?
Yeah.
About not being able to throw out 27 ideas in half a second.
Yeah.
So that put me at ease, and I realized that, okay, as long as I understand that that's the way my mind works, then that is the way that you should practice architecture. Now, I ended up with a degree in psychology, within 6 months after I got my degree in psychology, I fell head over heels in architecture. There was no doubt in my mind within that 6-month period of time. I remember turning to my roommate at Sonoma State College and I said, dude, I got it figured out. And he says, what? And I said, the rest of my life, I'm going to be doing architecture. And he laughs. He laughs. And he says, are you crazy? You're getting a degree in psychology. So I went out. Tried to get back into college for architecture. None of them would have me. I went back to the architect that got me interested in architecture, who was a man by the name of Harold Miesky, one of the great architects on this peninsula. Harold, I hope you're still around. I'd love to talk to you again someday. That's the man who got me interested in architecture. And he said, Neal, I'm sorry you can't get back into college, but maybe you should get a job as a carpenter. What? I spent all this time getting this degree, and now you want me to dig ditches? And he said, yes. And he says, you know what? You won't regret it, because he said that's the way I came into architecture. So when I work with clients, and I didn't really know or think this through, I never start out with this idea of designing a beautiful building. Because you see, a lot of architects, they kind of pretend that they're there for the client. Oh, I'm very interested in your needs. I really want to design around your life. But sometimes that's kind of more sales talk than reality, because what they're thinking is, if I have the opportunity, I can get this on the front page of Architectural Digest and everybody's going to know who I am. So there's a lot of this in the architectural world. It's very driven by ego. There's a lot of this in the artist world in general. It's about me. And so I never had that, right? Because I wasn't interested in that. I had a spiritual upbringing. I knew about the fallacies of spending your entire life trying to be famous. Never had any interest in that whatsoever. But I did want to serve people. I wanted to help people. And so when I started designing, it was all about them. Who are you? What do you like? What makes you feel comfortable? What doesn't? Okay, can you show me the room? Okay, now if you're sitting in this room now, how does this room make you feel? Well, Neal, I really like it, except it doesn't have enough light. Okay, so if we had the whole wall out of window with that, no, that's too much light. Oh, okay. Now let's go into the kitchen. How do you feel in the kitchen? Well, I like it, but there's no space for me here. Well, if you had a desk with a computer on it, would there be a space? Yes. Now I would feel like I can combine my work with what I love to do with cooking, So, Jennifer, it's all about listening to the wife, to the husband. Can I talk to your children? Can I find out what they need? And I always come to it from an almost completely functional point of view. I want to reiterate, I have no concern with designing a beautiful building. I'm going to say that again. I have no concern with designing a beautiful building. I'm only interested in serving my client. What works for them, what doesn't work for them, what makes them happy, what makes them uncomfortable. There are relationships in the family. How is that floor plan going to affect the relationship between the children and the parents? How is that relationship, how is that master bedroom going to impact the relationship of the husband and the wife? Okay. So I do all of this. I design, I move the floor plan around. Oh, well, what kind of styles do you like? What kind of windows do you like? What colors do you like? Okay, let me add in some windows. Oh, you like steep roofs? Okay, we'll put some steep roofs on it, And then we're done with the house. And, my friend who is, without him, I'd be lost. He's a technical drawer, and he's just unbelievably good at drafting in the technical arts. And so he puts together a beautiful set of plans. The owner looks at it and says, my God, this house is beautiful. And then other people say it. I say, my God, Neal, that is a beautiful design. I could have cared less. Okay. So I shared this with Jennifer, and she had something to say about that process and why that might be going on. What was that, Jennifer?
Well, it was what you're doing. What you're doing by what you're actually creating by working in the way you're working is you're making sure that the client has a plus feel because you're caring about them and you're listening to them and you're valuing them. The client is giving you a plus feel because they're listening to you and sort of working with you on this creation. So you're both generating a plus feel. Then when you've created the house, because it's based around who that person is, they then feel great in that house. So their plus feels continue to be plus feels generating all the time.
Yes.
And in order to show that value, because of the society that we live in, they then pay you money, which in this model is called a tick.
Okay.
Now then, so what you've done is you've generated a plus feel, and then because of that, you've generated a tick. And in this model, I call that a frilly.
A frilly.
A frilly.
Like a frilly hem on a dress or something, like the frill.
Yes, a frilly. It's like an extra thing. It's like a bonus. It's like I know the way the word came about was I was talking to my friend years ago about this. She was a hypnotherapist, and she just bought this strange instrument that you use to put in your coffee, and when you pressed it, it thrust the coffee up. And it was like a frilly. It's like it's not just a coffee. It's now a coffee with this frothy thing. So it was like a bonus, like an extra thing. But it is just nice, really. It's just nice. So it's sort of again, I could use myself as an example because I'm doing this radio show with you. I'm really getting plus feels from it because I'm expressing who I am in a kind and humble way with you, and you're doing the same back. We're both using our imaginations, and we're sort of on the level. If then someone goes onto my website and then buys a book and pays for it, then that gives me a tick. So I've got a plus feel and a tick, which equals a frilly. So I've created money, and you've created money, which is called like human alchemy, really, by taking an idea and manifesting it into this three-dimensional planet by using physical things like bricks, mortar, in our case, telephones, to then create something bigger than just the idea was in the first place. And it's really how we can use this sort of society system in a good way, because you can create plus feels in the system at the same time as earning money if you approach it in this way.
Yes.
So normally what people do is because they're just looking at the money all the time and not looking at who they are, they're not valuing or caring around them because they're focusing on the money or on the job or whatever. They're just focusing on that element of it. They become cut off from themselves.
Yes.
So although they do get money and they do get a tick, they don't score a feel.
Yes.
And that, in the end, in the long run, makes them quite weak because they don't have any good feel energy in their energy power store. They don't have any, and they're cut off from themselves. So they need even more ticks. They need even more money. They need even more, cars and things, because they have no feels.
Yes. And so they look for something else to fill the hole.
Yes. Yeah.
Is this why the opioid addiction among millennials is headed straight through the ceiling? It is a massive addiction. And I looked at a chart the other day, and the line on that chart goes straight up. Something is horribly wrong with this generation in this country.
Yeah.
Is that part of this?
Technology makes it worse as well, because once what's happening is, and again, I'm sure you know, children are actually having relationships via a computer. So that takes you even further away from the animal, you are my friend, I'm your friend, let's hold your hand type experience, and it's replacing that which would generate a feel. It's replacing feels with the technology, because it's sort of like an interface between us as human beings. So even though you might be able to talk to the friends, or have a Facebook like with the friends, you're not actually experiencing them or feeling them. So it's
wait.
It's really,
why not? Why isn't it the same when I'm sitting in front of a Skype monitor with them?
Skype's a bit better because you can see them then.
So the visual helps.
You can see them. Yeah, you can see them. Remember, this is all based on our animal, physical, human being construct, yeah?
Yes.
So we're designed to work out reality, really, by physically, our senses, what we see, what we smell, what we hear, yeah, what we touch.
Yes.
That's how we work it out. Now, the more we can generate information from using our senses, the higher the feel score is.
The more we can generate information from our senses?
Yeah, the higher the feel score will be.
Okay, so then that means that if we have face-to-face time with somebody and they're in the same room and at the same table, we're going to get more feels from that than we are if we're talking to them through email.
Yes, absolutely. And, I mean, there's lots of evidence for this with counselling, for example, is that a lot of the time people feel better, not so much because of the counselling, but because they've been in a room with another person who cares.
Wow. Who's actually listening.
Yeah. And so they feel better. So, go on.
I was just going to mention an example of that, Jennifer. When when I go out in the morning, I'm getting older, and I'll leave the apartment. I live in downtown Carmel. Leave the apartment and I go for a walk. And very often along the walk, people grab me or they say, "Hey, Neal, what's happening?" Or what's new? And then I go to the coffee shop. "Hey, Kruse, what's happening?" And next door is Sam Salerno, and he's up there on his deck, and so then we spend some time together, and my other friends on 6th Avenue, and I really, by the time I sit down in front of my computer to go to work at 8 a.m., Jennifer, I'm filled up and I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
What I say to myself is I'm full of love, but it's specific. It specifically comes from these little loving conversations I've had in the morning. I feel like it's fuel.
It is fuel. It's your power energy store, getting more sparkling water in it, and you feel really good and really strong. I mean, love is a great one. I was just thinking when I was saying that, it's like, if you love someone, okay, you can talk to them on the phone, but if you're with them, you can smell them, you can see them, you can touch them, you can, you can bond with them, and that creates a large feel, a plus feel. Whereas on the phone, it's not so much, and that's why people miss people. That's why they miss them, because
yes.
They miss the feel. They miss the feel that they generate together.
There's an energy that comes from that.
Yeah, that's the feel energy. That's the energy that we create. We create that energy. And,
yes.
And that energy is, as you said, the energy of love. It's love,
Yes.
And that, again, is, looking at it from a more spiritual point of view, the sort of God-type love that is inherent in us all, but we need to actually be human and use our 5 senses to actually create that, We get the idea from our imagination, which is our unique, who you are as we are being created, but then we have to show that and feel it and express it and create things with other people to actually make that energy exist in this 3-dimensional planet. And it's a beautiful thing, Neal.
Wow. And I want to get back to the imagination, but real quick, Jennifer, in Carmel is like a real haven for dogs, like there's dogs and cats. And Carmel likes to say, we love dogs. Bring your dogs to Carmel. We love to have your dogs here. And all day long, people are petting their dogs, or if I go out, they introduce me to their dog, and I'll usually pet him a little bit. Yeah. Are we getting feels from petting our pets?
Yes. Yes. That's why having a dog makes someone feel so much better.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that
only if they like dogs? Only if they like dogs, mind you.
Right.
And I use again in the answer in the first book, I use an example of cats, because if someone doesn't like cats and cats are around them, they will actually get a minus feel. Okay.
Yes.
So you need to be able to be in line with who you are. It's no good sort of forcing it, thinking, actually, well, I should like cats. And I go into quite a lot of detail about you. Once you get the hang of this, you can start to be a super detective in detecting if there are minus feel cats in your environment that you aren't noticing, but that are giving you a very small minus feel all the time.
Wow. So this is a lot about people being able to look at themselves, watch themselves, how they're feeling, how they're reacting to the environment around them, learning what works for them and what doesn't.
Yes.
Okay, we are now on a break. This is the Neal Show. Power Talk 1460, 101 AM, 1460 AM, 101.1 FM, and 105.1 HD2. We have with us Jennifer Foster, Energy Dynamic Model for Humans. We're going to be right back to talk more about the imagination.
Are we to believe that our government really exists for the greater good?
When the sun goes down,
We have several dozen cases of biological testing over innocent U.S. populations.
the truth comes out.
So there is no question that with multiple mechanisms of climate engineering, these cyclones are absolutely being manipulated. There's no question.
Coast to Coast AM.
The population is not only expendable, they're an increasing liability.
Every night at 10 on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM.
Are your parents getting on in years? Perhaps a loved one in your family no longer able to take care of themselves like they used to? But what to do? Larger facilities leave you feeling cold. 24-hour home care, too expensive? I'm Neal with The Neal Show, and I want to tell you about a couple of friends of mine, Miriam and Herman, and their two wonderful residential care homes, Agape of Carmel and Flanders Court of Carmel, founded in 1989. Owner-operated, only 6 residents in each home, ensuring special, loving attention. Sunny, warm environments. Residents decorate their own rooms. Visitors come and go almost any time of day or night. Home-cooked meals made from wholesome foods and special diets if needed. Herman and Miriam drive their residents to doctor appointments, keep them laughing and happy like being at home. Usually full, they have an opening right now. So call Herman at 831-626-0824 for a tour of their incredible facilities or just for a little free advice. Again, that's Herman at 831-626-0824.
Power Talk.
Why should you pay attention to the news?
Because I should be informed.
You need to know what's going on around you.
Your world,
I like to stay informed. What's happening in our world is important because it affects everything around me.
your news.
Otherwise, we're just going to have a nation of idiots.
Keeping you connected to the valley, the
It
nation,
affects everything
and the
with
world.
the economy and life. Just to keep informed on what's going on.
Staying informed gives me the power of knowledge.
This is Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM.
Welcome back to The Neal Show. I'm Neal Kruse, your host. We have with us today Jennifer Foster. This is her third show with The Neal Show, and we are talking about energy dynamics. Her model is energy dynamic. Her website is energydynamic.co.uk. And Jennifer, you do courses as well for people, don't you? And Jennifer provides some courses which are completely free and which you can do by yourself at her website. Could you mention those briefly for us, Jennifer?
Yeah, I'd love to, Neil. Thank you. There's a course called Understanding the Mind, which is completely free and is based on the books. So you can do that to get a general sort of hang of the idea. And there's also another free course called A Mind Through a Child's Eyes, which is all about how to teach your children how to identify who they are, how to understand what makes them feel okay, the nature of the mind. And if you can bring them up to understand and be able to use this language to communicate with you as a parent, you're much more likely to be able to make sure that that child is resilient in today's modern society. So it's very good to promote their natural inner strength. So that one's completely free as well. And there's loads and loads of resources on there, including songs you can sing to them when they're tiny, exercises you can do with them, and so on. So it'd be great if you wanted to have a look at some of them.
Wow, that is wonderful, especially for the children, Jennifer. So We have been talking about what a feel is. We have been talking about the imagination, and she's been discussing with me, reflecting back to me some of my experiences in architecture and the use of my imagination. And so we're going to get into the imagination and that role in who we are. But Jennifer, I have all these realizations going off in my mind, and I wanted to discuss one with you if I could.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, carry on.
In the last part of the program, folks, we were talking about the fact that it's not the same to be talking to somebody via email or through the internet system. It's not the same as having them in the same room. And you've heard Larry and I talk about this a lot in the past. You need to be face-to-face. We need more face-to-face time with each other. We talked about on the website that we're developing for Carmel that it's going to constantly recommend to people, look, the four of you have been talking for 20 minutes. You should really go down to the Little Swiss, or you should go down to the Village Corner, or you should go down to, one of the local restaurants and hang together over a cup of coffee. That the website would encourage people to always do it face-to-face, which you can do in your own town. But Jennifer, I have this feeling that the reason there's so much unhappiness among our youth, the reason there's so much suicide, the reason that people have become so self-centered, so narcissistic, is that as a whole, our society and our technology has moved us away from the really good ways to build our fields.
Yes, you got it. Spot on.
As a whole, it has done this. It's removed us from talking to each other face to face. So you hear about the millennial, their favorite environment is living at home with their parents in their bedroom 6 hours a day, talking on their cell phone. That's their favorite way of living. That's not going to feed them. It leaves them
right.
deeply empty.
They're not creating feels. Yeah, they're not creating feels. So it's not, it's partly that the whole lifestyle is obviously not very good for you, but it's also that the opportunity cost is that you're not creating feels.
Yes.
And you need to create feels to have inner strength, good feelings. And if you haven't, as you said, you're weak.
Yes.
You're weak. And you're totally reliant on mind energy, which is the tics and the when you're thinking. And also the other thing I meant to say as well, because the other issue with computers and smartphones is to actually use them, you have to think, don't you? You have to go into your mind to even use them.
Yes.
So you've left that vibration of feel, love, care and gone into the mind because you have to think to use them.
Yes.
So it's even harder to score a feel because you can't be in mind and feel at the same time.
Wow. Okay. Just relating to that, there's a man by the name of John Brown, and he's a tracker, and he takes people into the wilderness, and he reintroduces them to Mother Nature. And so some of the parents with autistic children let John take their autistic children into the wilderness. And after a couple of weeks, they come back to John and say, "What are you doing?" And he says, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" "Well, they're talking to us now. They're better. They're happier."
Yeah.
What did you do? You must have some exercise. He says, nature heals people, folks.
Yes.
He said, all by itself, just being in nature is going to heal you.
Yeah.
Is that also this plus feel?
It is. It is. And as we briefly said earlier, is that you collect the information, the data that your brain needs from your five senses. So if you're in nature, you're having an experience in what you're seeing, the wind, the sun, what you're physically experiencing. Your whole humanness is collecting everything up, like, this sort of beautiful, like, overload of marvelous feels. So that's why you get a really good plus feel. And interestingly, I've done a YouTube video on autism and how this applies to autism. So if people are interested, they'll be able to find that on my YouTube channel called Energy Dynamic.
Are you saying that this helps with autism?
Yeah, well, yes, it does. But I also look at the actual idea of autism as well, to be honest, because often someone with autism is what I call a feeler. They are very much in their feel, and if this is a good experience, then people can become very creative and as we discussed, full of love and everything. But if it's a negative experience, because of the learning style, people can't understand, people can't communicate, etc., it becomes a negative experience, so they have very sad feels. So they go into a negative feel dynamic and then go into the mind, and hence difficulty in general behavior, anger, tantrums. So I don't really look at autism as such. It's more another way of, it's called the misunderstood, and it's another way of understanding autism. But really what I'm looking at is I'm looking at people who feel, because a lot of autistic people really feel. They really do feel loads. And that's one reason why they tend to feel quite bad, because who they are is not really understood. So therefore they're getting a lot of minus feels every day.
Wow. So just expand. This just keeps opening doors in my head. I'm sorry. I know we're going all over the place, Jennifer, but it's just so exciting. Let's talk about a homosexual person, right? And they're different, right? And a lot of times they get sneered at or made fun of, right?
Yeah.
And so those are negative feels, aren't they?
Yes, minus feels, yes.
Minus feels, excuse me.
Yes.
So if, as a society, we were more accepting of them and, we just included them and didn't have all these issues around them, they wouldn't be getting all these negative feels.
Absolutely. They'd be getting plus feels. Plus feels.
Yeah. So now, okay, we were taking this through the imagination, and the I pointed to a YouTube video in last week's show, and it's also in last week's newsletter. I might have it in this one. I haven't written the newsletter for this show. It'll be there right now because, remember, this is being pre-recorded. Excuse me. So if you can go to the website right now, you can download the newsletter for this show, but I haven't written it yet. I love pre-recorded shows, Jennifer. It's like a experience in time. Okay, so let's get into this imagination, because in that video about the self, she shows you all these components of what it means to know who you are. And then she finishes and she says one of the most important elements of who you are is the imagination. Why is that?
Well, the imagination is absolutely key here. It's step 2. And before I talk about that, I'll just say another thing about imagination. If you're in your mind dynamic and you have low feels and you're cut off, your imagination will be taken by your mind. And that is what your mind uses to project into the future and to project into the past.
Wait, could you say that again? I got a feeling this is really important.
Okay. If you're in your mind dynamic, collecting ticks, and you're cut off from who you are, or you have low feels, low power energy, your mind takes over your imagination.
Why?
And your mind, that's just what happens.
That's just what happens. Okay.
I think it's because it uses the imagination to create more ticks, to find more ticks.
Okay.
It uses it as a tool. And remember, the mind by itself is in the present. It's observing the present. It's not being in the present, but it is in the present. It's watching it. Okay? The mind watches the present, whereas the feel is in experiencing the present. So in order to project into the future and into the past, the mind takes over your imagination, because that's the only way it can do it.
Wow.
And that's why people use their imaginations most of the time to worry about the future or to worry about the past, and and it's where all your dreams are from, and do you know what I mean? That's your mind using your imagination.
So a worry is really the mind employing the imagination to imagine good futures, to imagine bad futures.
Yes. So the mind has taken over the imagination. Okay.
Hijacks it almost.
Yes, takes it over. It takes it over. Now then, so that's where the imagination normally lives in today's society, in the mind. Okay.
Yes.
Now, if you have good feels and you're doing the feeling, the good feeling, gathering up the good feels, your imagination then comes into you. You then have your imagination. And this is why when you're doing something creative, you stop worrying. And this is why lots of things like music, art, etc., are used in therapy, because it stops people from worrying, because you've only got one imagination. You've only got one imagination. So if you're using your imagination for you in a productive way, you can't literally worry.
Yeah.
So, but as soon as you stop doing the task, your mind might then take it over again. So there's that. But while you're actually doing it, you have it. You have your imagination. So once you know who you are, so that was just what I wanted to say as a sort of introduction.
Wow.
to it.
It's amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, pleasure. So it's used really to help your mind collect ticks, because it can project. Your imagination is like the time traveler. Your imagination projects your mind into the past and into the present. Okay. So,
yes.
but when we use it for who we are in our feel zone, it doesn't do that. It doesn't project into the present or the future or the past. It's very, very in the moment. And what it does is it uses your knowledge of who you are to then start to create. That's what it does.
Okay, it uses your knowledge of who you are to start to create.
Yes. So this goes right back to what you said, Neal, about how important it is to know who you are. Because once you have that, so if I know who I am and I know what I need, not what I want, but what I need to feel good, then without me doing anything, I will suddenly start to have really inspirational ideas.
Really?
And yeah, you will. And you'll just think, oh, I've suddenly thought of something. I've suddenly had an idea. I've suddenly had this. I need to do this. In artists, that's when they have their inspiration.
Right.
They might wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I've got to write that down. That's what starts to happen. And again, you can look at this in a very spiritual way as well, because if you're in your feel and you're feeling good, your spiritual energy will be in you. In your 3D life. So a lot of the information and knowledge will come to you. It will come to you by your imagination being the sort of the way it engages with you. It's the way you communicate with that element of yourself.
So this would help us be more creative. And then in being more creative, we would feel more fulfilled. We would then have more feels. We would then create more.
Yes.
Now,
you can't help it, actually. You just can't help it.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm getting from. Now, again, pausing as another bomb went off in my mind. Yeah. You talked about being that imagination. When the mind hijacks imagination, it takes you in the future and it invents these possible futures, takes you into the past and analyzes the past. But you said when you're creating something with your hands, you're in the here and now.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be with your hands, to be honest.
Right. Right.
It's just in that zone, in the zone.
In that zone.
Feeling, knowing who you are, and you will just get ideas. And then once you have an idea, you can then choose to create that in a physical form.
But it happens by being in the here and now.
Yeah, you will, because you can only collect feels in the here and now. That's the only way you can collect feels.
Yes.
So
wait. Why is that?
Because we're human beings and we're designed to live in the present as an animal. So
no kidding.
If you take,
really?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Welcome to the real world.
The real world.
Oh, yeah. It's like the best way to look at it is, as you give me sort of a few ideas just by talking about this, is, if you love someone and you give them a hug, you are collecting a feel. You are in the present, you're not in the past, you're not in the future. You're in the present, having a hug and collecting up a feel.
Yes.
That's the feel. That's the feel. Yeah?
Yes.
And as soon as you start thinking, going into mind, your feels will go down.
Yes.
Because you're thinking, you're not so aware of your senses, see?
Right. You're not really in the real world again. Now you're in a world that's one off
Yeah.
from reality. That's an
So you mean
imagination of it. That's a copy of it, but it's not the real world.
Yeah. Have I told you about the house? And funny enough, talking about architecture, have I told you about the house? I haven't, have I?
I remember that was Sarah Westall, but go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yes, yes. Well, if you imagine in a house, if you're on the ground floor, that's your feel zone. That's when you're doing, being, creating, loving, experiencing the ground floor. When you're in the first floor, that's when you're in your mind dynamic. So you are still in the present. Yeah, you're still in the present, unless, of course, as we know now, your imagination takes you into the past or the future. But you're still in the present, but you're looking at what's going on from the first floor. So you're looking at what's going on in the garden. You're looking at what's going on around you, but you're not actually experiencing it. You're just processing it because you're one step away from the experience because you're thinking about it. And then if you imagine being on the roof of the house, that's what happens when you have a spiritual dynamic, when you're in a spiritual dynamic. So you're even one step up again away from reality as a human being, and it's like observing yourself or what's going on around you. So the ground floor feel is being, the first floor is mind and is processing and thinking, and then the roof is the spirit, which is observing.
Wow. For those just joining us, we have Jennifer Foster on the show with us, and she is talking about the energy dynamic model, a model of human psychology that I believe is going to change everything. Now, okay, Jennifer, so, can you see what's happening in my own head? These are all these things that Larry and I have been saying. We need to be in the here and now. We need to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
You need to be in the real world.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, why, Neal and Larry? And say, I don't know. It works.
Yeah.
You're saying why. You're giving us the why right now.
It's the framework, Neal. It's no more and it's no less. And that's something that I've always sort of stressed, really. It's my little tagline is making sense of everything. It's the underlying dynamic. It's the underlying dynamic. And people say to me often, well, where's the evidence? Now, you can find evidence everywhere because it's based on how we work. It's based on how we work. So why do we feel better when we're in the here and now, with friends? Why is technology so bad with us? Why is everyone so stressed in society? And this model explains why.
Yes.
And then with that knowledge, you then become very powerful. And the other really good thing this happens with this model, which I really have noticed and it's so important, is it makes people start to become responsible for themselves.
Whoa.
It stops victim consciousness because once you start to know who you are, you start to own yourself,
Uh-huh.
Instead of it being a sort of wishy-washy, woo-hoo, I don't know who I am type thing, it's actually, no, I do know who I am. I'm someone who needs to sleep, 10 hours. It's someone who needs to be in an environment that has this in it. It's someone who needs to be educated in that manner. It's someone who needs to be around dogs because I love dogs. So you really start to own yourself and you really become responsible for yourself, which, again, is very, very empowering and really is, as human beings, was what we've lost. Because when we're in the mind dynamic and then we're in this society, we're forever being told what to do, we lose all sense of who we are and we become victims.
Yes.
So what this does is puts the knowledge right back at you, so you then start to feel responsible and feel powerful, because then you can start to create a world that is good for you.
You create a world that is good for you.
Yeah, in a kind and humble way. And because we need other people to love and to care for, it's not selfish.
Yes, exactly. Now, we're getting close to the end of the show. Not quite there yet, but I wanted to get your information out once more, Jennifer. This is Jennifer Foster, and there's 2 N's in Jennifer, and she is from Wales, England, and her website is energydynamic.co.uk, and she has 2 books that you can purchase from that website. And I just got mine today, so it definitely works. They're wonderful books. The Answer, Part 2, The Eye in the Storm, and I am working on these as we speak. Now, Jennifer, talk about your classes again and how people can do those if they would like to really get to know this. And by the way, I'm talking right now to school administrators, to teachers, to parents, to my friends in psychology and psychiatry, to all of you in the self-help movement. I think this is significant. Go ahead, Jennifer, your classes and how they would be able to experience that.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. Thank you. Right, well, on my website, which is Energy Dynamic, you can find some free courses. One is called Understanding the Mind, and is the first step, really, to understand this. And it's based on the books. So it gives you extra information, really, and it's a mixture of videos, downloadable sheets, and there's fun quizzes as well, actually, to check your learning on what's the tick and what's the feel. And there's also a free course, and it's not parenting, but it is for parents, about how to teach your children to use a language from a very young age, about how they can communicate with you about what they feel and how they are. And this is really effective, and I've done it with my 7-year-old, and he can tell me now, when he's having a minus feel, he says, when he's angry, oh, I'm going to fizz in a minute. So it's given him the power to spot when something is going to happen, so him and I can then make sure it doesn't happen,
Yes. So,
and that can be found. I've got another website for that, www.amindthroughachild'seyes.com. You can find it on my other website, but it's also there too. So everyone's welcome to have a look at that. It's got loads and loads of resources in it, loads.
A lot of really good stuff for children and parents in here. Am I not correct about that?
Yeah.
Did you pull one of your children out of school?
Yes, my third child is home. I home educate him. Yes, I do.
Was that better for them?
For various reasons. And I wish I'd taken my other two children out, actually. But by the time I got round to it, because again, this has all been a process for myself, Neil, as you know, it's all a process.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take my two other children out, and I didn't. And they did okay, but I didn't. But I found the whole thing quite dreadful, and my daughter was really affected by it, and it was she had a very bad time. Even though my son was head boy, and she became deputy head girl. So, but she had a terrible time. Underlying, the undercurrent was really bad. So, so I took my third child out in order, for many reasons, but that was one reason. And, he's thriving. He's thrived.
Wow. Oh, gosh, Jennifer, to my listeners, I look for these kinds of things. I look for things that can change the world around us, make us happier, better people. I'm deep into this. I'm reading it. I'm studying it. Be happy to talk with any of you about it as we go about our lives. I'm going to have Jennifer back in a little bit. We've done 3 shows now. I'm going to grow up around this material because it's really opening me up on the inside. Jennifer has discussed with me that once you understand this material, it leads to a whole different understanding of money and economics. And I'd like to go there with Jennifer down the road, if we can do that, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd love to, Neil.
And thank you so much. One last time, Jennifer, thank you. We'll be in touch. I'm going to be reading your books. Have a wonderful life. And thanks for doing this. I know it hasn't been easy.
Well, thank you, Neil, for letting me on your show. It's been great, really.
Thanks to my producer, Mark Carbonaro, to Larry and Herman for supporting the show, and to all of my listeners for being there, informing me, telling me when I'm off, telling me when I'm on. Love you all. See you in another week.